Hello, everyone. I'm Wendell Jones, and I'm the ambassador of the Bahamas to the United States of America. The embassy in Washington, D.C., and the consulate offices in various jurisdictions in the United States, we are very happy to engage members of the Bahamian diaspora in conversations. Over the last several months, many Bahamian professionals in various spheres have spoken about life in the United States of America and the contributions that they are making here, as well as their contributions to the national development of the Bahamas. And so today we are speaking with a number of educators who are a part of the diaspora in the United States. We have Dr. Alana Dillette, who is an assistant professor at L. Roberts Payne School of Hospitality and Tourism Management in San Diego State University. Monique Roll, who is manager of menu planning and procurement in the Baltimore City Public Schools. Mr. Leron Bailey, who is the head band director at KIPP Generations Collegiate High School in Houston, Texas. Then we have Mr. Ashley Farrington, who is principal of Valletta Public Schools in Minnesota, and Mr. Casey Bethel, who is the principal of New Manchester High School in Georgia. Thank you all so very much for joining us today in yet another conversation with outstanding Bahamians who are working in the United States and doing extremely well. And so I'm going to allow you to further introduce yourselves by telling our public exactly what you're doing, and you can elaborate as much as you want. Let's begin with Dr. Dillette.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share some of my story. So let's see, you said I could talk as much as I want. So I'm from Freeport. I don't know if any other Grand Bahamians on here, but I'm representing Freeport. I'm actually an associate professor now. I forgot to change my title. I just recently received tenure and promotion here at San Diego State, so I'm really proud of that. And I have lived in the United States now since I graduated high school, so since 2005. So I've been here for a while, but in California for the last, I'm on my 7th year now. And at San Diego State, I work in our hospitality and tourism program here, which I really love. And I originally got into this field because of my upbringing and living in the Bahamas, where it's such a large part of our economics and our everyday life, whether you're in the industry or not. So that was my original sort of entry into this field. And now I work specifically, my research that I do is around social equity across tourism. And so making sure it's accessible by all and also sustainable. So I try as much as I can to bring some of that back to the Bahamas, because as we know, we still are very dependent on tourism. And so making sure we're doing it in a sustainable way is one of my goals. And I also work with our National Society of Minorities in Hospitality here at San Diego State, which is another one of my passions. So that's a bit about me. And I was also a swimmer as well for some time. So that is a part of my identity that I'm not sure if anybody would recognize anymore, but maybe if we're in the same age group, you would. So that's a big part as well. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you. Monique Roll.
Good afternoon, Ambassador Jones. So my background, I am from Nassau, Bahamas. I attended St. Augustine's College, where I actually received the highest GPA in home economics for that particular year. And then I also studied at the University of the Bahamas, formerly the Bahamas Hotel Training College, where pretty much during those formative years, I had wonderful chef trainers like Emmanuel Gibson and Chef Addie Mae Farrington. And from there, I went to the Culinary Institute of America, the Hyde Park campus in New York, where I studied culinary arts and culinary arts management. From there, I had various positions, executive chef, chef manager, and then moved into my current role where I am the manager of menu planning and procurement with Baltimore City Public Schools. I have been with the district for 7 years, and my primary role and function is to ensure that pretty much procure the food items needed for food nutrition services for our 164 schools. We currently serve the students is 77,000 students, and we serve over 100,000 meals per day. And we are the 5th largest school district in the state of Maryland.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Ashley Ferguson.
Thanks, Ambassador Farrington. Close.
Yeah, okay.
Give you a hard time, but no, I'm Ashley Farrington. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys in this space. I from the Bahamas, obviously, like most of us on this call, all of us. I graduated from SAC, St. Augustine's College, in 2007. And that's when I moved to Minnesota, actually. And then I went to St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota, which that's a connection between a lot of Bahamians and SAC, where we get to come up here. And some of us, like me, get to stay. I was fortunate to meet my beautiful wife while I was in college. And we now live in Minnesota, and we have 2 kids, Lamont and Leanna. Lamont is actually now at my school, coming to school with Dad. So that's a cool experience. He's going to be 5, and Leanna is 2. And so, yeah, my wife is a teacher too. A little bit about me professionally. I have worked in Wayzata Public Schools the whole time. So this is now year 12 for me. I went from being a 1st grade teacher for 5 years, a 3rd grade teacher, and then I started to move up the journey, the admin journey after that. And so I was a dean of students for one of our elementary schools. Then I became AP for 2 years, and now this is my 3rd year being the principal here at Birchview Elementary. I'm just really excited about this work. Teaching, I always knew, my mom always said, you were that kid on the porch teaching those kids in our neighborhood. And that's always what I want to do. So I've found my spot, and I just really enjoy the work. And I'm also wanting to I'm happy that somebody reached out on their behalf, on the ambassadors team behalf, to have me be a part of this panel, because I want to connect with Bahamians. We have a unique Bahamian group here in Minnesota, surprisingly. In fact, we had at my house, I had a big July 10th Independence Day celebration at my house with our Bahamian cohort here in Minnesota, and we've grown to really know and appreciate each other a lot, so we can have that sweet taste of home even in Minnesota. So excited to connect with everybody here.
Very good. I'm glad to have you, Mr. Farrington. Casey Bethel.
Let me say good afternoon to you, Ambassador, and good afternoon to everyone who is watching. Thank you so very much for this opportunity to share in this discussion today. I'm speaking to you all from the principal's office at New Manchester High School. We are a high school in a suburb of Atlanta. There are 150 teachers, 1,800 students. And I get the honor, the privilege to guide their learning and their development. I like to say every time I get the opportunity to speak that I'm a proud graduate of Palmdale Primary School and St. Augustine's College, both in Nassau, Bahamas. So I am a product of both government schools and private schools, and I credit them both for the seeds that were sown in my life that give me the skills and the abilities to do the things that I do now. And last thing, Ambassador, last time you and I spoke 4 years ago, at that time I was working at Georgia Tech. I spent 9 years as a science teacher, after which I was named the Teacher of the Year for the state of Georgia. That was back in 2017. And I did that for a year. I worked at Georgia Tech for a year. And some might ask, what am I doing back in a school? Another thing that I land on very often is that I'm from a country and a culture that celebrates our educators. So I always had the feeling in my mind that being an educator is a very proud profession. And it was something that I was excited to come back to have my hands in the dirt and really, really sow in the ground for young people to continue to be better.
Very good. Glad to have you. Mr. Bailey?
Yes, sir. Mr. Ambassador, everyone, good afternoon. So, as you know, my name is Laurent Bailey. I am from Nassau, Bahamas. I'm unlike all these other good folk, I came from Doris Johnson Senior High School, around the corner from SAC. So maybe we got some of that blessing in the air.
Okay.
I was a part of the first graduating class when Doris Johnson was built in 2003. Went off to school after that to Barbara Scotia College, a small college on a track scholarship. Came back home and joined the police force. I was there for 7 years, matriculated through the police band and urban renewal. I was one of the band directors at urban renewal. I got an opportunity to come to Prairie View A&M University, where I finished off my bachelor's in music education and my master's in administration, school administration, education administration. While I was there, I spent 7 years with Prairie View A&M as the percussion director for the marching band, wrote music, taught drills. It was never my intention to become a head band director. It wasn't, but my prayer has always been to God for him to have his will and his way. So, the opportunity afforded itself. And as a percussionist, it's not a thing for the percussionists or drummers to be the head guy. Be always the assistant. And I wanted to change that narrative, and I wanted to get the opportunity to provide some guidance to other percussion guys and let them know that, hey, it's possible, man, you can be the head guy. So I've been doing that. I run a brass band. I do private lessons. I gig. I'm music director for the church that I'm at. So yeah, my life is all music. Married with 3 kids. So that's cool. My my daughter is like 3 weeks old. So she's, the last button on the jacket.
Very good.
Yeah, and a 7-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter as well. So
glad to hear that. Thank you. And we have with us too Dr. Robert Taylor, who is Dean and Director of Land Grant Programs at Florida A&M University. Dr. Taylor, it's good to have you here today.
Right, good to be here. And I'm one of the, you might say, the old guys. I graduated, but I went to Xavier's College, graduated from SAC in 1964. Went to GHS to do advanced levels, and then 2 years later, I went to Tuskegee, where I did a BS in agriculture, agronomy. And then from there, I went to Michigan State, where I did master's in soil microbiology and PhD in soil chemistry. And after finishing Michigan State in 1977, I came back to the Bahamas. I'm from Nassau, came back to the Bahamas, and I worked in Andros at the BARTAD, the Bahamas Agricultural Research Training and Development Project, for 2 years. From there, I came back to the United States because I was very much interested in research. And I worked at Tennessee State University in Nashville for 2 years. And then I got an appointment at Alabama A&M University as an associate professor. And I worked at Alabama A&M University for 30 years there. And from there, I actually, while at Alabama A&M University, I worked for the National Science Foundation as a program officer and also as a deputy division director. And in 2012, I also served as dean at Alabama A&M University for 5 years. And in 2012, I came to FAMU, Florida A&M University, as dean of the College of Agriculture and Food Sciences. And I've been here now 10 years, and I'm ready to go back to the Bahamas.
I heard that before. I remember doing an interview with you on television some time ago, and it's good to have you on with us. And I'm going to ask you all a general question, and as I said, I would like for all of you to chime in, and let's just have a conversation. Dr. Taylor, since you were the senior on this webinar that we are having, what is education about? What is education for? And this is a general question for all of you, and I want you to chime in on this, because we want to inspire as many Bahamians as possible. Not only young people, but not so young people, because education is for everyone. Sometimes we get this notion that only young people are supposed to be involved in it, but it's a continuum. What is education for?
I think it's there to develop actually your workforce. That's, to me, is the main thing. And anyone can tell you, the workforce that is very productive is also very educated, because you get the necessary training that you need. And so I see it as developing human resources. And if you can do that successfully, you can have a thriving country. But countries that don't have that tend to be lingering.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Dillett.
So the first thing that came to my mind, coming from the university setting, so I'm, really teaching young adults who are still kind of learning who they are, but they're no longer children. I think of education generally as a space to help students to understand how to critically think about problems that they face in the world, and how to think of unique ways to solve those problems, especially because, the world that we may be living in 10, 20, or 30 years, maybe a world that we don't even know yet, right? They're going to have, I even think now, even though I've only been teaching in university systems for about 10 years, I've already seen a huge shift in the jobs that are available now that didn't used to be available. So helping our students to really know how to think about problems that may not even exist right now is the way that I see education at all levels. And I also have a little boy. He just turned 1 and he just started school, daycare. But I also think about it as a place for us to connect with others, learn how to socialize, learn how to collaborate, and creatively work together towards our goals, whether that be, as Dr. Taylor said, getting into the workforce, or maybe we want to be in entrepreneurship and think about something that doesn't exist yet. I hope to help them to get to that place.
Can we have Dr. Casey Bethel chime in on this? He's a principal at the high school.
Yes, sir. First, I want to agree wholeheartedly with both Dr. Taylor and Dr. Dillett. I heard Dr. Taylor speak about education preparing the workforce, and I heard Dr. Dillett talk about education equipping citizens to think critically and to work well together. I would layer on top of those two and say that I press us to begin to think of education as a national security topic. The countries that are the most stable, the countries that are the most secure, are the ones who recognize that where education is the most effective and the most efficient, our country is more equipped to continue to progress, to continue to proceed, to continue to care for ourselves and our own needs.
Okay, Mr. Farrington.
Yeah, I have to start by agreeing as well with Dr. Taylor, Dr. Dillett, and what Casey just shared too. Just what I see, especially in my role as an former elementary teacher and now principal, just I look at it as an opportunity, especially as we continue to see these changes in what we are experiencing in our schools, and thinking about how we can embrace that opportunity to really help guide students. And I use the word guide versus, like, I think in the past, that notion of tell people what to do is no longer a thing in education spaces. It's guiding and trying to let kids find their best selves, and trying to reach their highest potentials and guide them along in that process. I think it's a really cool opportunity to bring a diverse group of people together who have many different perspectives, and then nurture an environment where we can appreciate those perspectives and appreciate those perspectives, celebrate those perspectives, and also have those spaces where sometimes we don't understand those perspectives, but that's the place where we're going to learn that. And that's where schools, I think, and education is a really, really key component of our future. And Dr. DeLette shared this as well in terms of how do we get our kids now to be future ready. A lot of the jobs that they're going to be doing don't even exist yet. And some of them do, but a lot of them don't. And so how do we give them those problem solving, critical thinking skills to be able to navigate this ever changing world that we are experiencing right now? So that's my opinion about education and the luxury we have as an opportunity.
And Mr. Bailey, you have been involved in vocational training. Give us your take on it.
I agree with what everybody has said. I mean, when it comes to questions like this, I sort of tread lightly because you say, what do I think education is, as in what it is right now or what it should be? Mm-hmm. Because, you know, everybody who answered really talks about, you know, and so happy. Let me add it. I'm so happy that these people are people who are sitting in high positions and they are talking about what education really should be. So they are controlling that culture and what the culture of the classroom is and should be. I've been teaching in the South. So, you know, some of the things that they say are not really prevalent in public schools. I teach at a charter school. So some of the things that are not really prevalent that they talked about. But that's what education should be. It should be about thinking. It should be about teaching our kids what is socially accepted behavior. How do we act when we get into different places? Learning about different cultures. You know, not just it's about math and English and social studies as well. But we're talking about the future, like Dr. DeLette said. You know, we're preparing kids now, and she said 10 years, man. The way things is moving right now. Next 2 or 3 years, you know, in the next year or so is different. So, you know, it's about preparing our kids to think outside the box that most of us who might have graduated, and I heard the years 2005, 2007, I was in 2003, you know, the things that we were thinking about back then, most of them things don't even exist no more. So it's a thing where preparing our kids to think, be socially aware of how we carry ourselves, what we say, to listen more than we speak, to always be a learner. Education is, like you began, it's not about your age, because you're always learning new things to try to keep up with how fast-paced the world is.
And Monique Roll, you are involved in administrative capacity, dealing with feeding students, I suppose, in Baltimore. Give us your take on all of this.
So my perspective on education is that we still educate the whole student. So that comes with nutrition education. Why are we eating the foods that we're eating? And then also the supply chain, talking about sustainability and looking forward to some of the items that, like everyone said, what we're eating now may not be what they're going to be eating in 10 years from now, and looking at those changes. And then also from the education perspective of ensuring that the meals that we're serving are authentic. When you talk about cultural differences, because we have many different cultures within the school district. So making sure that they are aware of it and the meals that we serve are authentic and what they would see at a restaurant. So from my perspective, education, is outside of the classrooms as well.
Let's talk generally, ladies and gentlemen, about the quality of education that we see in the Bahamas as well as in the United States. Ought there be a particular standard that everyone should strive for? Because some get the feeling, that the standard of education in one country is different from the standard in another. Let's talk about the extent to which we should bring about as, and I'm going to go back to Dr. DeLette, social equity in education.
I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. And For me, it's a complex answer. Because on the one hand, when you bring up the word standard, I automatically think of the inequities across standardized testing that we know exist and has really come to light recently. So that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, like you said, I mean, all of us graduated at schools, various schools in the Bahamas, and eventually have ended up in the positions we're at now. And I do remember when I came to college, it just being a very different type of educational system. I don't think it was good or bad. It was just different. And so I really had to learn the ropes of this new Americanized system and larger. I mean, I was lucky to be in smaller groups of students, as opposed to when I went to university, being stuck in a class with 300 students and 4 tests. You know, I don't think that's right either. So I do think that there needs to be a standard of care that we are all figuring out how we teach our students in the classroom, and also like Monique said, outside of the classroom. What is that education we're giving them to actually help them to transfer those skills into the real world? And that's sometimes where the gap is. I believe it comes through experiential and hands-on learning, and that looks different depending on the age you're teaching, depending on the subject. But I think that should be standard across the board. And, you know, let's be honest, right? In a lot of places, the resources aren't there, financial resources and other resources for educational systems, which is one of the major roadblocks that we see to institutionalize some higher levels of standardization that you talked about.
Okay, Mr. Bethel, money, is it important here? You know, you went to Palmdale Primary, I believe it was. Let's talk about it, and all of you can chime in this. And as we talk about the quality of education, why is money and the amount of money so important here?
I'm fresh from a conversation earlier today with a group of other educational leaders, and we were talking about the impacts of per pupil spending on education. And there have been situations where more money has been spent on education in certain places without reaping the intended benefits, right? So yes, there's some correlation between the types of the socioeconomic status of the students and where they come from and their educational outcome, right? Poor students are doing poorly, and that's across the entire United States. I'd venture to say that's often the case across different countries. But I will tell you, I always lead with the explanation, and I attended Palmdale Primary, I attended St. Augustine's College. And when I got to SAC, I wasn't deficient, I wasn't behind. I felt like I was very well equipped. I believe that there are pockets of success happening in every school. The question though becomes, how can we get that to every student, right? What was not missing in my home, regardless of which school I went to, was an emphasis on the importance of education. And I'd say that if a child doesn't bring an appreciation for the importance of education to them, with them to school, it doesn't matter which building you send them to. It doesn't matter who's standing in front of them. Now, how do we societally, across the entire Bahamas, across the entire United States, across the globe, how do we return to the day where we say to kids, education is incredibly important and perhaps the only way for you to build a secure future for yourself? That message, I believe, has gone largely quiet, and we need to return to that. And the conversation then becomes, how do we do that?
Mm-hmm. Anyone else here? Dr. Taylor, yeah, please chime in on this. The socioeconomic situation, as mentioned by Mr. Bethel.
You know, when you think of education, what I think about is excellence in education. You know, how do we go about delivering excellence to our students? And all of us know, you know, we were in the Bahamas, we were brought up in a British system. which in itself was very selective. Not everybody went to high school. You had to pass examination to go to high school, but in the US, they try to educate everyone, right? But as we move along, like somebody said, the world changes so fast, you know, and so we have to adapt our education to the changes and I guess the methods of learning, you know, according to what has changed in the world, right? So we all have to be very creative and ready to adjust to going forward and dealing with a different student than what we were brought up with. And so that in itself I think we need to have work research on education. How do we learn better, right? And especially to suit the times that we're in.
Ambassador Jones, I'll share this. I'll share the space right after this, I promise. But to Dr. Taylor's point, if there is going to be an adjustment in what we teach, I will say this. He's absolutely right. One of the big shifts over the past probably generation is when I was coming through school, both high school, primary school, high school, college, the emphasis was on content knowledge, how much information you could absorb. What's different now is because of cell phones and we each have one in our pocket, all the knowledge is accessible. So if we are going to shift what we are teaching, the world is telling us that we need to place so much more emphasis on what's called 21st century skills. It's less important now for you to have the content knowledge in here because you can get to it easily. What's missing amongst young people is what do I do with the information? How do I parse through information? What's reliable, what's not? How do I problem solve? How do I collaborate? How do I communicate what I understand? Those 21st century skills have to take priority at this point.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to chime in with that because he really hit something on a nail on the head there, because I think one of the things that we think is like, you know, that content focus versus now today is more about that skill focus in terms of how do you, like we said, problem solve, critically think, and that stuff in terms of how do we give people the tools to navigate that. It's less about how well we do on an academic test. I feel like that's starting to get, hopefully the shift is moving. It's more about how can you do well in all different areas. Our school district actually did some work where we met with 5 different corporate companies, big companies in Minnesota, General Mills, Target, and asked them, what are you expecting from the workforce today? And nobody said how well your GPA is. I mean, that's a nice thing to have, but nobody talked about GPAs and all that stuff. They talk about problem solving, critical thinking, being able to work with other people, being the key criteria of what they're looking for and who they're hiring, versus like some of the other things that I think in the past we thought was what is, you know, everybody needs to go to Harvard. That's not necessarily the case anymore. It's like, how can everybody find their niche and whatever they think their niche is? Because we still need a variety of workers in our workforce. And then going back to your question too about just this social concept of education in terms of how do we true equity, right? Equity and funding, especially in Minnesota. Our Black and brown kids are not doing or performing well as our Caucasian kids. And I think one of the things is because you can see the disparities in our systems in terms of if you live in the urban areas or you in the metro Minnesota, Minneapolis, it truly feels like you get less than if you're in a suburban area. And I think we have to truly figure that out in terms of how do we get each and every student what they need, just no matter their zip codes. And that's a journey where we're not there yet. And that's some work that I am hoping to continue to foster in my school. When I talk to my teachers, like, how do we meet kids where they're at and focus on the things we can control? Because I feel like sometimes we spend half of the time spending time talking about things we can't control, but what can we control when they're here from 8:30 to 3:30? What can we actually control, right? We can make a laundry list of excuses. And I come from a single family home, and usually, you know, people can start to give you the access because you come from, but that didn't deter me from getting where I needed to get. And because the teachers who I had, Miss Longley, I hope she's listening, as my third grade teacher, she didn't focus on that. She focused on me when I was there and gave me everything she got. And I think that's some of the shift that we need to continue to make as well.
Yeah. Okay. I want to chime in. Mr. Bethel and Mr. Farrington. Everybody touched on some points, and they pointed out some things that I use in my classroom in terms of when I walk into my classroom. I have these just little sayings that I say all the time to my students. Mr. Farrington said it. No excuses, just results. We need to be more result oriented. All right. We can spend a whole lot of time shooting out these words in education and these words in the classroom that mean absolutely nothing to our students. Who are there hungry, and who are there and they didn't sleep because their mom and dad was out working all night, and they was up keeping their baby brother or baby sister. They couldn't get the work done. So no excuses, just results. Let's keep our students focused on being result oriented. How can I help you be better? Mr. Bethel talked about something, and I like to refer to it as equality versus equity. Right? There's this picture going around with 3 guys standing on crates trying to watch a baseball game. I don't know how many of you have seen that. And the equality says that these 3 guys are standing on 2 crates each, but one guy is shorter than the next, so he needs an extra crate. Equity says the guy who's the shortest gets the most crates, then the guy who's taller than him gets 1, and then the guy who can just stand on the ground and see the baseball game, he doesn't need a crate, so he can go on and still be successful and all see the game. We have to focus on equity. We got to focus on equity. And what that looks like can be different in different places. So from my experience in urban renewal as a police officer dealing with urban renewal bond, I saw this every day. We didn't have the resources to put the kids in the classroom and get them ready for college and that kind of stuff in a classroom environment, right? But we had A of Adley schoolyard, we had instruments that we had to do maintenance on, and we had a will to succeed, right? I can say that a lot of those kids have graduated from college and have gone back into into teaching and to be successful. Now I'm teaching in a Title I school where my classroom is like 99.9% Latino, and they deal with the same stuff, right? So my focus is when my kids come into this classroom, how do I leverage what I know and what I've been doing and create relationships with them so I can better help them? Because I can get in front of the classroom and we can learn all the music we want. And at the end of the day, the kid picks up nothing. But I need a kid who, he may not be a good trumpet player when he leaves, but he's able to go sit down and have a good interview with somebody. He can sit in front of somebody and say, look, I spent 12 years in school. I don't intend to go to college, but I am really, really good at computers. I don't have a degree in it. I want to go to school. My parents don't have, but if you start me here, this is what I know. This is what I'm willing to learn. And so we need to focus on equity versus equality, and we need to focus on results. What can we do while we have these kids, and build these relationships in our classrooms and in our communities by large, to get our kids to buy into our program and give them something that would be sustainable for when they leave, when the bell rings, they are able to be successful in whatever it is that they want to do.